So, this interview has a double dose of recovery awesomeness. I also have for you the beautiful and talented Taylor Jordan, who is founder of Mother to Mother Recovery Center. And you have a beautiful story yourself. Would you tell us a little bit of your lived experience and background and your inspiration for creating this recovery center?
Oh wow. Okay. So I guess starting with a little bit of my background. I am the daughter of three. My mom had three girls. I unfortunately was raised alone in Toledo, Ohio, with a great aunt. My mom had got into some trouble years ago, which led her having to run, and she ran up north to my aunt, and thus I was born. She met my dad, and I didn't learn this until years later, but I was a one night stand baby. For me, when I first learned that, it was embarrassing. But as I got older and I learned more about who I was, I learned the power behind that. Because I mean, it all takes just one time to create a life, right? But the fact that my mom and dad only had that literal one chance, and then here I come. I thought there was some power, and I definitely knew that had some meaning and purpose behind it. Um, so I was raised by my great aunt. They were 60 and 69 when they got custody of a 3 month old.
Oh, wow. So, very different upbringing
Yes,
from your friends.
yes, yes. I lived in probably one of the worst neighborhoods in Toledo, Ohio. We lived in, during that time, it was the Northwood Apartments. It later through the years had many different names, but we sat in the center between two rival gangs. So the neighborhood sat between the Bloods and the Crips,
Mm.
and the Northwoods kind of developed their own gang, which was family, which was neighborhood, and everybody kind of stuck together. But me being raised by older parents, we lived on the kind of smaller side of the neighborhood where it wasn't that many apartments, and so I was never allowed to go to the other side of the street, and that's where all the excitement was.
Right.
That's where everything went down, and it's so funny. I like to always refer back to the cartoon Pinky and the Brain, because every day they wanted to try to conquer the world.
Right.
Every day my mission was to get to the other side of the street. It was hilarious, but
It's like intense FOMO.
yes, I mean, and so um, but when I finally did make it, it took me almost 20 years to make it back. Um, Bagging up just a little bit, when I was about 11 or 12 years old, I had this older cousin, and he was responsible for taking my aunt to the doctor, to the grocery store, things like that. And he began touching on me, and touching on me turned into um, some oral acts, and then the oral acts became the full fledged physical act. Um, and I was sworn to secrecy. Um, and even though I knew it was wrong, I think I had grown so numb to it over the years. I blocked it out. It just became a normal thing.
Mm.
And I was told that I could not ever tell, because if I were to ever tell, it would destroy the family.
Wow,
So
that's
I,
a lot of weight to hold on your shoulders as a young person.
hmm um, and I was forced into kind of a mature role because of having older parents. So by the time I was 10, I was basically caring for them. Cooking, cleaning, doing a lot. At an early age, my aunt taught me how to write checks, and just everything. She wanted me to know certain things so that if anything were to happen to her, I kind of knew the basics. Um, so I kept that secret all those years, and till I couldn't keep it no more, because I became pregnant at 15.
Oh, wow.
And when I became pregnant, I felt my life was over. Like I didn't know how I was gonna tell. I knew I could only hide it for so long. I knew our abortion was not an option. I knew I still had to go to school, and everything was just happening so fast. Then I also knew I had to run from my cousin. So I would hide and go places on the days that I knew he had to come take them to the store or to the doctor. And I hid the entire pregnancy until I was about 7 months. I couldn't hide it no more.
Wow, that's a lot of baggy clothes.
And my belly button has always been my telltale sign. I would tape quarters to my belly button to keep it from protruding.
Oh wow.
Just oh god, it was just the. I'm a kid in my mind, but I'm forced into this adult role, right? And so by the time I was 16, about 2 months after my 16th birthday, I became a mom. To Miguel, my oldest son. Um, but then I'm also forced into having to lie. I had to lie about who his dad was because for several reasons. One, I was afraid. Two, I was embarrassed. And during that time, a lot of statutory rapes were happening. And they had started cracking down on it. And they were giving away some serious time. And I knew that if that come out, he would do some serious time. Why I was protecting him, I don't know. But I thought about it. And so, anyway, when my son was about 8 or 9 months old, that following year, that June, we had the family reunion, and I came down to Georgia, and I saw my escape. I saw my kind of my way out of that, having to hide and having to keep that secret and having to keep that lie going. Um, so the family reunion that year, I came here and I never. Well, I did go back because I for about the first 2 years I would go back and forth. Then I met my daughter's dad and just ended up staying in Georgia. So I moved to Georgia and I learned a lot of deep, dark family secrets. I learned that my mom was an addict. I learned that my grandma had catered to my mom for so many years. She had enabled her for so many years. Um, every time I heard about my mom growing up, she was either getting out of jail or going into jail.
Right.
So I moved here and learned why. Um, I really didn't understand why she would leave me up north. And all I really wanted was to get to know her. I knew I had other siblings here. I knew that my grandma and my aunts were here, but I did not know what was really going on. So when I became a mother, a part of me also wanted to know about my mother. Because before I come here, I didn't even know how old my mom was, you know. And so I come here and I learned a lot of ugly truths. And I think one of the hardest things for me was to find out that, they all thought that they would never have to deal with me. They figured I had the good life because I had a really
Right.
good life. I went to private school. I had the best of everything. Um, but I had that void in my life that led me wanting to know my family. And I come here and it was like the bomb had dropped on them,
Yeah. You're
and
like,
they
this
were
is too
not,
much. I didn't want to know all this.
they weren't prepared. I wasn't
Right.
prepared. And so in learning all these things, I was angry. Excuse my language. I was mad as hell.
Yeah.
I was mad as hell at being lied to. I was mad as hell at learning some of the things that I did, and I didn't handle it well. Um, of course, during those years, marijuana and alcohol was my thing. That was everybody's thing starting
Right.
out, and I was spoiled. So, I had a little money. I had the means of having a good time, but that good time soon turned into my first charge,
Okay. What
which
did that look
was at
like?
19 years old. No, I'm sorry, 18 years old. I ran my mom's boyfriend over with my car. aggravated assault with a vehicle.
Wow, that is quite the first charge. Usually people get like some shoplifting or
No,
minor possession, but
no, that stemmed from during those years I was selling drugs. Me and my daughter's dad, and we were selling quite a bit. And my mom found our stash, and she stole every last bit of it, the money too. And she also, I was living with my grandma. I had just moved out, so my income tax check came to my grandma's house that year, and she stole that as well. She was really good. Like, she found a way. She come up with this whole idea of depositing into her boyfriend's account. He was in the army, so they didn't question much. And anyway, I found out about it, and I came to confront them at my grandma's house one day, one morning actually, and it ended with me running him over with my car, and catching that very serious charge. Um, but because of my mom's history, because of his history, because of everything that had happened at my grandma's house, because my grandma's house, unknowingly to me, was once the trap.
okay.
A lot of stuff happened there throughout the years, a lot, and so my grandma's house was well known, um, to the police, and my mom's story was well known to them as well. So they kind of gave me a pass. The charge was dropped from aggravated assault with a vehicle to reckless conduct, and I got 12 months of probation. But those 12 months of probation soon turned into 16 years of me in and out of county jails and institutions.
Wow, so the probation didn't help.
No,
It didn't.
not at
No.
all. No. Um, Now, in those 16 years, it went from abusive relationships to, I mean, because I was looking for a void. I was searching, you know. The relationship with my then daughter's father, who he took on my son as he is, and so I say their dad. That ended when he went to the feds.
Okay.
He was sentenced to 10 years in the feds, and my life really spiraled then. Our relationship ended bad too, prior to him going to the feds, and so it left a void. It left a brokenness in me, because I thought I thought I was the Bonnie to his Clyde, you
Right.
know. And so when that ended, I was lost for some years, and I kind of hated even the idea of men in relationships.
Right.
So I just turned into like this savage lone wolf, you know, and I was just lost with marijuana. Then at that time, marijuana and alcohol. Soon, cocaine was introduced into the party. Um, and then that tailspin from um, a loss of years, memory, time, um, and in between that, the other bad relationships.
Right. And were your kids present through all of this?
So my older children, Maya and Miguel, they stayed with me until they were 12 and 8.
Hmm.
Um, I had another son. He's 17 now. He was born. Maya and Mari are 4 years apart. So he was 4, she was 8, and Miguel was 12. And that's the ages they were when I lost them. And I didn't necessarily lose them, but I had lost myself.
Right.
So I knew that I had to place them somewhere before I lost them.
Right.
So Maya and Miguel shared a grandma. Um, so they went to her, and then Mari had his own grandma, so he went to his grandma. Um, and then that's when I think I really lost it, because I didn't have.
Right. You didn't have your kids
Right.
or anything. Yeah, that was part of my story as well. When I lost my kids, I was like, well, what's the point? You know,
Mhm.
now just mash the gas because
Mhm.
you just don't even care. You don't
Yep.
want to live anymore. and just by whatever means. So to the next part of it, is that when things really like intensified? Like, is that where you kind of like took um, took a turn? You know did the idea come across like, hey, maybe I need to get sober, or just like,
Um, so about, I guess, 2 years after losing them, I realized I something got to change. But it didn't happen that easily.
mm-hmm,
Um, I had started going to jail more. Um, I had lost pretty much everything at that point. My children, my home, my hair, my mind, my weight,
right,
my family. Um, it was when my great aunt who raised me passed. Um, that would have been 2010. When she passed away, um, whatever hope I did have that I still tried to hold on to, it left. It left completely. Cause she was my center. She was the last piece of my backbone. Um, I don't think I want. I think a piece of me died with her. A lot of people don't know what it feels like, what it even, how to even begin the process. Being in the bed, I was in the bed with her
mm-hmm,
when she took her last breath, right?
wow,
Holding her, and so I would say probably for about 2 years after that experience, I literally relived that night over and over
mm,
and over. Every time I closed my eyes, I could hear that last sound and feel that release, and I just replayed it. And they say, for an addict, any excuse is a good excuse, right?
right, of
I had the
course,
best.
yeah,
I had the best excuse at
mm-hmm,
that point. Like my mom died in my arms, not my
right,
birth mom, but she was my mom,
right,
and so I had I was angry. It was a lot that was going on with the family during that time. A lot that I forget so much of that I don't. In telling this part of my story, I leave so much of it out simply because so much of it was a blur.
right,
Um, but there was a lot going on with the family. A lot of the family had pretty much turned against me at that time, and I look back on it now. I understand, and one reason was because they were so tired of what they went through with my mom.
right, and now they have you, and
And they were burnt out. They didn't have sympathy left when it was time for me.
mm-hmm,
They didn't have any patience left when it was time for me to go through. They didn't have anything to encourage me. They was just like, you know what, you're gonna be just like your mom. That's all
mm-hmm,
they had for me. You just
right,
like your mama. You just, and I hated that. Um, but when she passed away, um, I really mashed the gas. Like it was full throttle. There was a little bit of money left to me, so I had the real means of really mashing the gas then. Um, and to
did
make
you,
matters worse,
oh, good, 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 good,
11 months later, a female killed my dad. You know. But what were you gonna say?
wow, I was just gonna ask you, like, in this, sometimes when people die, like, people find like something in like their faith. Did you have like anything in your faith, or were you just like,
So today I can definitely tell you that I know that's the only thing got me through. My great aunt, if she didn't give me nothing else, she gave me the knowledge of God. I went to a private school. It was my church's school, First Church of God Christian School,
mm-hmm,
and there was a whole subject called Bible,
mm-hmm,
right? And and I know it like the back of my hand. And it was during those times that even in the midst of the hurt, the anger, I would, if I didn't know how to do nothing else, I knew how to pray. And kind of to just bag that up just a little bit right before she passed away, I can remember being in my grandma's house. I got a fifth of something in one hand. I don't even know what. And I got drugs in the other hand. And I was so tired and I was so lost, broken, and just I knew something had to change. And I remember dropping on my knees in the middle of my room at my grandma's house. And I had the nerve to pray to God and say, I'm willing to sacrifice everything I have to be free from this addiction. Now, when I said everything, so I was in a desperate space, right? To even say those words. They say be careful what you pray for.
Mm-hmm.
Because now, when I said that prayer, I still had a few material things that I was willing to sacrifice. I didn't realize when I said I was willing to sacrifice everything, I didn't know that it was going to literally be everything. Because at that time, my children were still living with me at my grandma's. Um, and like I said, I still, my mom was still alive, my dad was still alive. I kid you not, maybe 4 months, 3 months after that prayer, my aunt died. 11 months later, my dad died. My kids, one by one, I actually had to place them somewhere because I didn't want them to continue. I didn't want them to continue to see me like that. My hair started falling out. I could never keep my freedom either because I had done something or a warrant. I wasn't going to probation, so I kept a warrant. So the loss of my freedom, the loss of time, like I literally started losing everything. And it was one day in the jail cell out there at Clark County Jail. I was laying there and it hit me. I lost everything. And I thought back about that prayer. And I thought, well, God, if this is the sacrifice that I was talking about, you got my undivided attention. Like, I am ready. Lo and behold, I was in there that time. I had like 8 or 9 charges, 6 of them felonies. I was looking at some time, and they agreed to let me go to rehab.
Wow.
And I had just I'm I know I'm kind of lapsing times here a little bit, but I forgot I had just had another daughter right during that time, and Mia was a couple months old, and they took her immediately after I gave birth to her. Of course, drugs was in my
Right.
system.
Right.
And I was told I was unfit, and I was going through the whole defects battle, and
Mm-hmm.
all of that. And so, and being in that jail cell, being in that situation, thinking back on that prayer, um, and they gave me the option of rehab, and I went to Mary Hall Freedom House.
Okay.
And Jamie, that was the first time in my life. Now I'm gonna be honest, I didn't go for me at that time though. I went for my daughter. I went because I had this pride and this arrogance that said, I'm gonna get my baby back out the hands of these people. I'm gonna get my daughter back. And as soon as I get it back, I'm going back to doing what I was doing. I still was in that battle, right? Because
Right.
I was hurt, I was tired, I was tired of living like I was living, but there was still that pull on me that,
Like a stronghold.
yeah,
Do you believe that there is a spiritual side to addiction?
absolutely, absolutely. Reason being because I've seen some things. I've had some experiences that I know people wouldn't believe.
Tell us about it.
I'll share two, I guess, of my wildest experiences.
Okay.
One, there was this lady. We called her D. She's passed away now. She was I used to call her my sister. She was a little older than me. She was on the green side, and so I could pretty much talk her into doing anything. And her house was the house, but it was my safe haven outside of the madness. She kept a clean house. I was always welcomed. She had just moved into this apartment, and she used to swear to me that there was a demon in that apartment. And I used to be like, look, these drugs is not this good. You are tripping. And she said no. And she would tell me, we would never sit in her living room as it got dark. We would always go to the room, keep the door closed, and she kept something up against the door. And and if I would leave out to like go to the bathroom, she'd say, close the door, keep the door closed. And I always thought she was tripping. But I never, I believe in the spiritual world, but I just had never experienced anything like that. So one night, I'm at her house. I go to the bathroom. I'm sitting on the toilet, and I laugh at myself sometimes telling this story, especially now. But I believe it with my whole soul. I'm sitting on her toilet, and the way the bathroom was made, when you walk in, there was a vanity sink right in front of you, and then the toilet was next to it, and then the shower. So I'm sitting on the toilet, which put the shower to the right of me, and she had this big, beautiful shower curtain. And I was a weirdo in my addiction. I don't know why I used to like get high in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't judge me. I used to like to turn the lights on. And I was sitting in the bathroom, and I was getting high in the bathroom. And I hear the shower curtain just really lightly moving. And you know how you're in the dark and you just flick your lighter, so your eyes are kind of blinded by the light. So I had to give my eyes time to adjust. I looked over at the shower curtain, and I could see this figure come out of the shower. And it come out the shower slowly, and it knew I saw it. And it come out and stood right in front of me and leaned into my face. And I leaned back. And when I leaned back, I just stood up and kind of eased around it and went out the bathroom, and I told her I have to go. I gotta go. I gotta go. I never told her about it. She begged me not to go. I said, no, I gotta go. And it was the weekend before the 4th of July. I'll never forget, because she was supposed to go to her mom's house to see her children for the 4th. And she wanted me to come back. She had a boyfriend, so when he was there, she was okay. But if he wasn't there, she never wanted to be there alone, and she begged me not to leave. And so the day before the 4th, I go back to her house, and I knock on the door. Her car is there. Everything. I've been calling her. She didn't answer, and she didn't come to the door. I thought maybe she had company. A couple days later, we found out she was in there dead.
Wow.
Yeah. So there was that. And I would definitely have to say that was probably the craziest experience. One of them, anyway. The other one, it's a lot. I don't know. I don't think none of them really top that one. Um, it would probably have to be at my grandma's house. It was me and my sister. And my sister had started losing her mind over a period of time. She had a lot of things going on. And we all kind of just started ignoring her, calling her crazy, just letting her do her thing. And me and her were getting high on my grandma's porch one day. And she was, for about a year and a half, she would not come out the house. She would not come past the front or the back door threshold. And so we were on the porch, but she was leaned against the door, squatted down in the doorway. And I was sitting in a chair next to the doorway, and we were doing our little rotation thing. And I see her look, and she looks up the street, and you just kind of see her freeze. And so I look up the street, and I saw what appeared to be three men walking down the street. Now, it was a Saturday night in Georgia, so plenty of traffic. My granny lived downtown Athens. Plenty of traffic come down the street. It wasn't normal to see what appeared to be three students walking down the street. That was not out of the norm. They're walking down the street and they're talking. And so I'm sitting there on the porch, and I decided to put the blunt out so they wouldn't smell anything when they walked by. And she got up and went in the house. And when she got up and went in the house, I just sat there and I watched them walk all the way down the street. And they got as close as where we're sitting to maybe just a little bit past that wall right there.
Okay.
And they stopped on the sidewalk in this formation. It was one here, and one was standing here. But the two were facing towards the house, and the other one was facing his back to me. And they were talking. And I'm like, what are they talking about? You know, just being nosy. And I clearly heard one of them say, she's watching.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's watching. And I'm scared, but I'm not. Because I was a bit of a tough ass in my day, right? So I'm sitting there, and I'm scared. I'm getting mad. So I don't know the time period. I watched them as I'm sitting there, and for a minute I was so scared that I couldn't move, and then the anger kicked in. Why are they sitting here watching me watch them?
Right.
Right. So I get up, I bust off the porch, but instead of walking up the sidewalk, I go all the way to the street and start walking up the street towards where they are. It was 3 trash cans.
Whoa. That's crazy.
It was 3 trash cans.
Oh my goodness.
I don't tell that story because I know it sounds crazy as all get out. But I don't have any. That's it. I don't have any explanation of what was that, what happened, was the trash cans. There would have been no need for 3 trash cans sitting there. They had just built those 2 houses next to my grandma's house. Nobody lived in those houses.
Wow. Well, and you saw them walk up the street.
I saw them walk up the street. I watched them walk. So my grandma lived on Ree Street, and I don't know if you know Ree Street, the Varsity area.
Oh yeah.
So the front of Varsity sits on Broad Street. The back of Varsity sits on Ree Street. That's my grandma. So I watched them walk from up there by the Varsity all the way down that street. So I wasn't imagining 3 men walking down the street.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. That is intense.
Yeah.
Sounds like they were like demonically
it was not
stalking you or something.
It was not. Yeah. So I definitely am a believer, right? In the spiritual realm, both good and bad.
Mm-hmm. So when you went to Mary Hall Freedom House, was that your last go round?
That was my first.
Okay.
This time right here being my second. But while in Mary Hall, all those years of my life prior, I had never seen a woman that looked like me in power. Mm-hmm. They just weren't in existence.
Right.
When I say me, I mean an African American woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw her, and I heard her. So my first time encountering her, Miss Lucy, she come into, which was our conference room, this huge conference room, and it was about 100 of us maybe in this room, and she come in and she goes into this prayer, and she's just praying over all of us. And I had never even heard anybody. I've heard prayer, but to me, she was. So we all had our heads bowed, right? And we knew she was coming in, and she started praying, and she was praying so hard, I had to sit up and look at her, and I literally locked in on her the entire time she was praying, and I was blown away. And then maybe a couple months later, I got to see one of her documentaries, and I got to find out her story and how she became who she was, and how Mary Hall Freedom House, at that time it was Mary Hall Freedom House, now it's Mary Hall Freedom Village. Um, but I got to see how she became, and how Mary Hall became, and immediately that's when the seed was implanted in me. I knew without a doubt that this is what I was being led to do.
Wow.
I knew it. I knew it. There was no doubt in my
It's
mind.
like she dropped the mantle on you.
There was no doubt in my mind that this was my calling. And so, but it just took me a minute to get
Right.
there.
Right.
Because I stayed there for about 22 months. I graduated, and the plan was to stay there. But some things happened. One being the grandma that my children were living here in Athens with got sick. She was already sick, but she passed away. And Maya and Miguel, which were the older two, were with her. And Maya was young enough to come, but Miguel was not. He was too old to come live on premises. And plus he didn't want to, because he wanted to graduate from Clark Central. So that left me in a bind. And then at the time he was 9. My 9-year-old was here with his grandma. He didn't understand why I couldn't get him right away. Shortly after that, he attempted to kill himself.
Oh my goodness.
At 9 years old.
Wow.
So that she passed away. I had to come see about him. So she passed away in July. Their dad passed away in August. My baby boy tried to kill himself in September.
Wow.
And then my grandma died in October.
It was almost like a repetition of the same tragic events from before happening again, like many traumatic events at one time.
Yep.
So it was like, at that point, I mean, what did you do?
I was not prepared. I thought I was. I come back to Athens, and the network that I thought I had built, and the foundation and the strength that I thought I had, I soon found out I did not. I didn't know about the rooms then here, like I know about now. I didn't understand even the importance of them then. And I can remember saying, like, they don't give you a how-to manual to survive some stuff like this. But they do.
Right.
I just hadn't read it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I just hadn't read it. And so, anyway, I come back, and for a while, I was living with my sister. She was almost married, and she was living with this guy. So, she let me get her apartment, and I was staying in her apartment with 4 of my children. And my oldest son is mad at me. My daughter is super clingy. My 9, soon to be 10-year-old, who just almost killed himself, is on these mental health meds. Mm-hmm. He won't eat. He won't sleep. He's having behavior issues. I didn't know how to handle it. And then I just got custody of my 1-year-old back. It was too much.
Yeah. It's stressful.
I was not prepared for having them all just given back to me like that at one time. Even though I love them, I wanted them back. That's what I was fighting for. but I was not prepared. And so when my daughter's dad passed away, we got a bit of an insurance collection. Then her survival benefits started, and that money was my trigger. You do not give a lump sum of money to a recovering addict who just had four traumatic back to back
Right. Yeah.
experiences, and no level of support. So my granny died in October. November, I got the money. December, I was high. January, I found out I was pregnant again.
Wow.
Yep. So that was how my 2014 ended. After just going through 22 months of recovery at Mary Hall. Um, so, like I said, January I found out I was pregnant. June, I gave birth to that child on my living room floor,
Oh my
alone,
goodness.
high, scared to death to call the ambulance because I'm high. Um, and I gave birth to her alone on my living room floor, and of course they took her too. So I lost three of them due to my addiction. Um, but yet and still, I it was kind of okay with that situation because my cousin who's in the army took her, and she told me, you get it together. You coming back to get your baby? Like, I don't want your baby. You're
Mhm.
gonna have to come back and get her. So I made. I guess I thought I made the attempt to get it together, but I really didn't because I was okay because I knew she was okay.
Right.
And the following year, I am pregnant again. But this time it was. I,
You are a fertile lady.
yeah, he said be fruitful and multiply the earth. I think I understood
It's
that
like
assignment very well.
don't even breathe next to her.
I think I understood that assignment very well. And to be honest, I don't think that I would do it over any other way. I don't. Other than maybe not being high
Yeah.
and having the stability and probably being married and all that good stuff. But all of those situations that ended in pregnancies were lessons, and they were, you know, um, so with my 9 year old that I lost, that was a time in my life right after my mom and my dad had died. I had a void. I was trying to fill it, and unfortunately, she's the only child who I have no clue who her other side belongs to, and I don't have any shame saying that today.
Mhm.
Because that was an era in my life where I was lost. I was broken. I was hurting. I wanted somebody to love on me, and I was going at it the wrong way. And then my other daughter, she was my rehab baby. I had just come out of rehab. I was actually drawn back to Athens because of what I thought it was going to be a good relationship.
Mhm.
It was a supposed to be engagement. It was supposed to be a new beginning. It was supposed to be. It was a whole lie.
Mm.
He just was who he was. He had just got out of a bad relationship. He had just got out of the feds, and then I had known him for years, and he went to the feds, and then I went to the drugs, and we re met again after I come back from rehab, and we was like, oh, God brought us back to each other.
Yeah.
Oh, this is God.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, it was one of those situations, and then with my baby Miracle, um, my last daughter who I lost, I was in a relationship with my dope dealer.
Okay.
Um, I was a bit of a hustler, pretty heavy one. And I think he liked me because I was a hustler and I
Mhm.
spent a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
And, I confused that with, oh, he loves me.
Right.
um, and not only that, he had just come home from the feds as well. God, dang, for God's in the Uh,
We love those red flags.
oh goodness, this is the first time I ever thought about that. Like all of them I said was in the feds, and so he had just come home and he was kind of down and out, and I had just kind of hit a lick for about $10,000, and I went and I took the money. I'm like, here, get back on your feet, and I think that sparked his attraction right there, and then I ended up moving in with him and his mom and grandmom and brother and sister and two children. We were like the Brady Bunch.
Wow.
And the Brady Bunch trap house.
Wow.
And I was the only one that cleaned. And so I became an asset because it was just one of those things. But the relationship was so toxic. It was so unhealthy. And then I was who I was. And I got a mouth. I had a mouth on me. I would tell you, I would call you everything
Mhm.
but a child of God.
Mhm.
I was one of those. And so he didn't mind knocking me upside my head a lot and then patching it up by giving me drugs.
Right. Right.
Um, and unfortunately, during that time, he had the good drugs. So I thought, I didn't want him. I wanted the drugs.
Right.
I
Yeah.
couldn't leave him because I would be leaving my drugs.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. You were
I,
like a
I was
slave to
trapped.
it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I actually wrote a um, poem about that called Kryptonite. Uh, Pretty powerful. But anyway, yeah, so I'm pregnant, and the pregnancy, he didn't even believe the whole pregnancy that the baby was his. One night I had high, stayed out, and come home, and he beat the crap out of me. And my placenta ruptured. I was bleeding internally, and I was outside my car that night after he beat me up, getting high, and I felt my water break. And I go over to St. Mary's, and they were gonna try to stop the labor because I was only like 6 months,
Mhm.
and they told me I would probably have to stay in the hospital for the duration of my pregnancy, and I was not having that.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I took the IV and everything out, took all this stuff off of me, and I left. And I went back, and about 2 days later, I had to be rushed back to the hospital, and they had to go ahead and take me. My blood pressure was so high, they was wondering how did I even walk into the ER. It took them 9 days to bring my blood pressure down after I had the baby.
Wow.
Um, so they told me they would have to do an emergency C-section. And they told me that one of us may not survive. And they asked me if we have to choose which one, if we had to choose which one to save, which one do you want us to save? I was so tired. I was so broken. I was just so done. I told them that if my baby has more than a 50% chance of survival, save my baby.
Wow.
I thought that I was making the selfless decision.
Mhm.
And I told them to save her. And I remember when they were sedating me to take me to do the C-section, I can remember going down the hall praying. Um, and I just told God that I surrendered, you know. And so when I woke up, I don't know how many days, I don't know. Was the next day, same day, I don't know. But when I come to, we had both survived. Um, and they told me that she probably wouldn't make it through the night. She was 1 pound, 1 ounce. Um, and I went and seen her, and I just refused to go back. Um, but again, I had to stay in the hospital for 9 days. So I called my son, my oldest son, and he didn't even know I was pregnant. And I realized, okay, I gotta tell these other children that what's going on with me in case something does happen to me. So I called him. He came right up to the hospital, and he wanted to see her. And so he came and put me in a wheelchair and rolled me up to the NICU. And she was big enough to fit in the palm of my hand and still have room.
Wow.
And she was so tiny, and her skin was still so transparent. You could literally see the veins in her skin. And my son said, "Mom, what's her name?" And I said, I haven't been able to name her because I didn't want to name her. He said, "Mom, we have to give her a name." And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Mom, she is a miracle. We have to give her a name." And I said, "Well, that's her name." And so, anyway, they told me that she would never walk, she would never talk, and she would always be on a feeding tube. That's what the doctor said.
Mhm.
But my God said
Yeah.
she will walk, she will talk. She's now 6. She plays karate. I just got off the phone with her this morning.
Wow.
So she talks well
Yeah.
and very good. And she
Yeah.
knows everything. And that is the power of prayer. Um, but when they released me 9 days later, I went and saw her maybe 2 or 3 more times, and I never went back. And I didn't see her no more for 5 years. The first time I saw her was um, this year, June 4th of this year.
Wow.
I didn't know where she was. I didn't know, even begin to know how to find her, but they found me. They found
Wow.
me after 5 years.
Ugh.
Yeah. So
Wow.
I kind of went way another direction with that one, but those were the 3 children that I lost due to my addiction. Um, but now, you know, after going through the 22 months of recovery, losing it, I went those 5 years, 4 years, lost back out there in that darkness. When I finally come around, when I realized um, it was November of 2018. My son had his own first apartment, and we had kind of started back communicating. He was like, "Mom, I want you to cook Thanksgiving for me in my house for the first time." And I was like, "Okay, still doing my thing," but I was
Right.
like, "Oh, okay, I can clean up long enough to come cook
Yeah.
Thanksgiving for you." And I promised him I would. And I got locked up the week before Thanksgiving. And I was so hurt by the fact that I had broke yet another promise. I decided, you know what? This is it.
Yeah.
I'm done. So November the 16th, 2018 was my last day ever using any drugs or alcohol. Why? Because I was arrested, but because I
Right.
decided whenever I get free this time, I'm done. I'm
Mhm.
not going back. So I was locked up for 6 months, and after I was released, so the even more powerful part, and just the power of God even. Um, so I while in jail, I over the course of like 10 years, I became the prayer warrior. Every time I would go to jail, I would start a prayer group,
Mhm.
Bible study. They knew I knew that Bible
Mhm.
like the back of my hand. It became a running joke out at the jail. Here come the preacher
Yep.
back, you know. And it became a thing, and the girls really looked forward to seeing me come. It was funny, like it was almost like a family reunion every time I
Yeah.
go to jail because there's always somebody there, right?
Yeah.
But
Like
they was always
same
glad,
group.
same group. They was always
Yeah.
glad to see me coming because they knew it was time to pray.
Right.
And so, I was looking at some serious time this time too, and I I prayed and I told God, I said, God, if you just spare my life one more time, I just asked one more. Now this is about the 100,000th
Yeah.
time I prayed this prayer, but
Right.
I promised God that if He's just spared my life one more time, I would use the rest of my life in service to
Mhm.
others. And I did not have a court date. I did not have a lawyer. I did not have anything. My daughter was scheduled to graduate high school May 19th. And I had promised her the year before that I was going to be there. And it was getting closer. It was like the end of April, and I'm like, oh my God. So I started praying. I'm like, God, I need to be out of here for my baby's graduation. I already missed my oldest son's graduation. Do you know because I wasn't there, he didn't go to his own graduation?
Oh.
I didn't find this out till a couple of years ago. But because he knew I wasn't going to be there, he didn't even walk because I wasn't there. And I said that I was not going to do that to her.
Mhm.
So I began to pray. And I'm like, God, I just, please, let me get out of here to be there for my daughter's graduation. And May 2nd, I went to court and I was free. And I knew that I could not go back. I knew that I could not, mess that up. And so when I told God I would use the rest of my life in service, I got out and got busy.
Okay.
I got out and got busy. I got out and I said, this is it. I got, um, God has kept his promise. He kept his end of the deal. Now I got to keep my end of the deal.
Mhm.
I got out and I started chairing meetings. That's always how I start, right?
Right.
I started chairing meetings. I started doing service work. I became, um, um, I got me a home group. I did all the things that they told me to do. And then I got connected with some people that was telling me, like, man, you'll make a really good cares.
Yep.
Like, man, your story is powerful. You'll make a really
Mhm.
good cares. Like, you got a strong voice and you got such a determination. You'll make a really good cares. And I met Shane, and he said, you need to try to apply, and I did, and the rest is pretty much history. I applied, and that insecure brain, all they not gonna. I'm not
Mhm.
gonna get in. Like,
Mhm.
it's only so many people.
Right.
There I go.
Right.
Woe is me. Sure enough, I got in, and next thing you know, I started working at PLR, and then
And then there's a whole another side to the story also, but tell us about, so you opened, went mother to mother,
mm-hmm,
and that is in
Elberton.
Elberton, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you do here?
So, Mother to Mother, we are a 12-month inpatient facility for women, and we just provide a wraparound of support services, from job readiness skills to um, getting them their visitations going to start back working on reunification with their children because most of the ladies there are have open defects cases
Right.
and they're fighting to get their children back.
Right.
So we get them going through Advantage, any kind of counseling services they need, get them employed. Um, we support whatever their pathway is. Me and Shane got this running joke that we don't care what your pathway is. It doesn't matter if your pathway is to get in the tree and howl at the moon. It is
Right.
our job to find you a tree to howl in.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
so we support MAT, NA, AA, spirituality. We just support it all. Whatever you need me to bag you in,
Right.
that's kind of what. And I intentionally um, structured and created Mother to Mother not to be like any of the other programs, because I've had my share of them.
Right.
And even though there's always structure, there's always rules. There's also my theory of here's your rope. You can either use it to pull yourself out this hole,
Mhm.
or you can use it to hang yourself.
Right.
The choice is yours.
Right.
Um, but so yeah, and we're also in early planning phases of expanding to a women with children unit,
Awesome.
because the need is so great
Right.
and because my passion is so deep. because I was also there as well, where I think for a lot of these women, not only because they can't afford it, but also because they have these small children who nobody can or will take while they come get recovery.
Right.
And so we see that is an extended need,
Absolutely.
to have
Absolutely.
that service to be able to provide a safe social environment for women with their children.
Hmm. Yes, that is definitely one of the biggest needs. People reach out to me all the time, and their biggest thing is, but I can't leave my kids.
Mm-hmm.
I have nobody to take my children.
Mm-hmm.